if the universe did not nudge me in that direction, I probably wouldn't have done it. So here I go. I'm just going to try one assignment just to say I did it. No one says I have to do longer than 3 months. I can go do it. My grandma still laughs and she was like, that was 10 years ago. You were supposed to come back.
That is so funny that you say that, because taking that first step to like leave your staff job and your home and your comfort zone to go travel is a really big, scary step. But you might love it. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go take a couple of assignments, just see what it's like out there, and then I'm gonna come back. And
Yep.
I have never gone back home.
Yep.
Jeri, why don't you just start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from or where you're living, and maybe a fun fact.
Okay, my name is Jeri. I have been a pediatric nurse now since for 11 years, I think it's been now, which makes me feel so old. So been a peds nurse for 11 years, and it's approaching my 10, like January will be 10 years as a travel nurse specifically, which
Wow.
absolutely blows my mind. I can't even tell you because it feels like my first assignment was just yesterday. We can get into that later, but so the travel aspect has been a long time of my career as well. I don't really know much different. I'm from Indiana, Indianapolis originally. I still go back there all the time. Currently on assignment up here in the Bay Area at Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, living in San Jose. It's coming up time for my contract to be done with that as well, so we'll see where I go next.
Awesome. Have you always been a peds nurse?
Yeah, I've only ever done peds, which I know is kind of rare. I feel like some people usually dabble a little bit, at least in something else, but I've never wanted to. I've always known that kids was it for me. It was more of kids was always what I was going to do. It was a matter of what that was going to look like. For me, it just ended up being healthcare. So I can't, there's no way. I can't imagine doing anything else.
I am with you on that. As a former pediatric nurse myself, I can't imagine the day-to-day of working with adults for many, many reasons, but kids were definitely my niche as well.
Yeah, and it's good that we have, everybody has their own flavor because I have, I tell my adult nurse friends that they tell their stories and I'm like, there is absolutely no way I could do that. And they're like, there's no way I could do yours. So
I know. I think
good that we have the variety.
yeah, that's actually like such a cool thing about the nursing profession is there is something for everyone. And that's awesome because we have all of these different like types of people that need care at different stages of life. And the fact that as a nurse, you just kind of can choose what suits you. It's great.
Yep, and shop around till you find it. Luckily for me, I found it right away. So I feel blessed for that for sure.
Absolutely. And so I know that you mentioned that you always had an interest in working with kids, and it just kind of happened that healthcare and nursing was the route that you took. How did you decide on nursing in the first place?
That is a great question. So I actually, during nursing school, well, let me back up. In high school, we had like a program, a senior year, we could do cadet teaching is what it was called. And so you could like literally a whole semester shadow a teacher. So I did that, dabbled in that first. Did not speak to me the way that I thought it was going to because teaching was one thing that was way up there with everything else I was considering. And so I'm like, man, okay, so there goes that plan. Wasn't really feeling it the way I thought I was going to. And then something that I'd always tossed around too was to be a pediatrician, actually be a physician. And that's actually what I wanted to be. I mean, I have like pictures of from when I was little of me being like a doctor, a pediatrician. And so during nursing school, my first and second year, I was also doing prereqs for med school, which looking back, I'm like, I was an insane person, but it was me just wanting to be prepared. And then, I went through the whole thing. I did well. It was a lot of work, but then my grandma was a nurse. My grandma on my dad's side was a nurse. And I hadn't really decided on nursing 100% yet, so we hadn't had too many chats. And then she, unfortunately, my freshman year of college passed away. And I just didn't get the opportunity to ask those questions, and I so wish I would have, but I distinctly remember being at her funeral, and she was an oncology adult nurse for years, her whole entire career. And I was there, and former patients of hers were there.
Wow.
And they came up to me and they were like, I truly believe I wouldn't have survived cancer if it wasn't for your grandma. And I'm like, what in the world? And I just
I have
remember thinking like,
goosebumps.
I know, and like I can't even believe it. I distinctly remember it. And they came. I'm like, imagine like having enough of an impact on somebody that they're coming to your funeral. I mean, that's just like unbelievable.
Mhm.
So it really made me think, and I was like, man, do I want to be a physician just to say that I am? Like, what's the reason I'm actually in this? And I realized I'm in it for the people. And so that's when I decided to be nursing. Long-winded story, but that's the
No,
truth.
yeah, no, that's an awesome story. I got goosebumps listening to that, and that is such a special part of the nursing profession is like you get so much FaceTime with your patients
Yeah.
and you just really form those connections and that bond and like there's I don't know how I would compare or if there is anything to compare to that feeling of leaving the hospital and just like having this feeling that you have made an impact and like have really touched someone's life in an important way. I
Yeah.
don't know what other professions like you get that in.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's like you get to your car and when you actually sit there and have a moment to yourself finally after running around all day and you just kind of like let it loose because you're like, oh my gosh, like for both good and bad reasons, you're exhausted, but also for good reasons. You're just like, whoa, that's just like a
Right.
lot.
Right. I know. Well, that for those like moments that I needed to like decompress or talk about what I had experienced at work or whatever, that's when I really found my nursing community around me to be so important
Hmm.
because like I could explain a day at the bedside to like, a spouse or a family member, but they just don't, no one quite understands what it's like if you're not a nurse. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, you can't quite get there with your
Yeah.
explanation to someone else. So, having
Completely.
nurses to talk to was so important to me.
You have to. You have to have each other. It's like, just like you said, no one understands exactly, even hospital to hospital, unit to unit, sometimes there can be like little tweaks. And so it's just so important to have each other. That's all you have. And I feel
Right.
like if nothing else, the pandemic showed us that for sure.
Yeah. How have you been able to find that as you travel or continue to make those like nursing bonds and relationships, assignment to assignment?
Yeah, that's interesting. I tell people that since I've been doing it so long, I'm like I'm the grandma of like the travel nursing world because, now these days there's apps, there's Facebook groups, I'm a part of like a Bay Area Instagram chat, and that is popping off all the time and it's amazing and that's a wonderful resource. That was not there when I first started. It was old fashioned, like get to know you. Hi, I'm going to be your friend today. So, um, when I first started my very first assignment, I think you just gradually get into it and you learn along the way. I mean, I think I'm very outgoing and I think people look at me and think that probably was just easy for her. It's not going to be that way for me. And I'm here to say it was not like that when I first started. It's not that easy. You learn each new assignment, each time you do it, what kind of works, what doesn't, what you need,
Hmm.
and how to manage that. So, I mean, my first assignment was in Dallas, and when I went there, I knew two people, so that helped. I lived with one person I knew. She was on a totally different unit, so I didn't actually even see her that much, but that helped. At least I knew someone. And then another person did that same assignment. She lived with her husband, so it at least was good to know one person. That was a way to ease in.
Right.
And then, to be honest, travelers are like minded. We find each other. And I always highly, highly recommend when someone's starting travel nursing, do not go to an assignment where you will be the only traveler. I
Hmm.
think that that's what helps find and bridge that gap is that there are other people that are in the same position as you. So if you go to a facility that's at least has a couple other travelers, that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're completely right. It's not easy. I remember when I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and when I left there, my first assignment was in San Diego, which I feel like San Diego is like the mecca of travel nursing.
Yeah, hot spot.
But yeah, and so I remember giving myself a bit of a pep talk the whole drive from Alabama to California. Like, I am going to push myself out of my comfort zone. I am going to speak to people. Like, I'm going to smile. I'm going to say hello. I'm going to, like, try to avoid getting takeout and just eating at my apartment. Like, I'm going to, if anything, I'm gonna go sit at like the bar at the restaurant down the street and at least talk to the bartender. So it was like definitely a push out of my comfort zone, but travelers do find each other. There's something in like the traveler mindset or personality that just brings us all together. And it was that first assignment in San Diego that I met my core group of friends that are still like my best friends to this day. And I think that that's so cool about travelers. Like
Yep.
like Trusted has a community. There's other online communities and Facebook groups, and like you meet people
Mhm.
at work, and it's just about pushing yourself a little bit to maybe be a bit more outgoing than you might normally be to like
Mhm.
foster and build those connections.
Right. And I mean, I feel the same way about San Diego. So then after Dallas, it was kind of like I met some people. I got my toes wet, I would say. And then my next assignment was like at a clinic in Michigan. And I'm telling you, that was the biggest struggle. I mean, to this day, that was still the hardest time I had making friends because I was the only traveler. As a matter of fact, I was the first traveler they had ever had. And there was like nobody, there was like, I think one other like young single person. She wasn't a traveler, but she was in there, but just at first not super like warm or just open. Fine. But so I definitely struggled in Michigan. And like you said, just being okay with like going out to a restaurant. That's something I hadn't actually ever done by
Me
myself.
neither.
So I know, and I'm like, I'm young. I'm like, why am I feel so weird? So I would like go to the pool by myself, and then I finally would branch out, and I went to the beach by myself a couple days, and now looking back, it's just so funny because I'm like, I do that every single day, like nothing anymore. But when you first do it, you just kind of got to start small, and it feels scary, and then by the time that size assignment was over, by the way, I finally made friends there, but it took the whole assignment basically. But
Yeah.
then the assignment after that was San Diego, and exactly like you said, I'm like, man, that I hit the ground running on that one. Day one of orientation, there's 10 other travelers. We
Right.
already made plans to grab dinner later that week and go out. And San Diego was like there's some of my best friends that are still in my life to this day. So
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, it feels like San Diego is a common stop in almost every traveler's journey.
yep. I
Everyone
don't know
goes.
why that is, but it's there's something magical about that place for something about it.
I know, I know. Well, so what was it that like gave you that push to start travel nursing in the first place? Was travel something that you always knew you wanted to do, or is it something that you explored on your own and decided to go for it?
Okay, here's the real tea. I'll give you the honest truth. I had thought about it. I mean, as you heard before, I mean, I only worked for about a year and a half, not even a full year and a half as a new grad before I started traveling. So it was really quick in my career. And so what happened, it's just funny because it's something that I always thought of, and I am super brave now because traveling has made me, but like I said, I wasn't when I first started.
Hmm.
So I had thought about it, but I honestly probably wouldn't have taken that step if I wasn't pushed to it. I truly feel like I was pushed. I mean, within 1 year, many things happened in my life. I had a really, really tough breakup. And then my hospital had some kind of major restructuring and they had massive layoffs. There was like rumors about it for a long time, and I'm like, maybe I should just jump the gun and start traveling before whatever. They laid off like 200 nurses. It was insane. It was really,
Wow.
really wild. And because they just went bottom, seniority, and I had just started. So all of my new grad friends and I got let go. And so I'm like, man, if this isn't, a lot of people stayed and just tried to find another job. And I'm like, hello, this couldn't be a clearer sign that this is what I'm supposed to do. It's like I would
Right.
probably on my own would have been too nervous to do it. And if the universe did not nudge me in that direction, I probably wouldn't have done it. So to me, it was just like the clearest sign that it could have possibly been. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, here I go. I'm just going to try one assignment just to say I did it. No one says I have to do longer than 3 months. I can go do it. My grandma still laughs and she was like, that was 10 years ago. You were supposed to come back.
Uh-huh. That
I'm like,
is
sorry.
that is so funny that you say that because I do think that taking that first step to like leave your staff job and your home and your comfort zone to go
Mhm.
travel is a really big scary step.
Yeah.
And I I think that the key that you touched on is if you try it, it's a contract. You can always go back. Like you're not
Yeah.
like committing 10 years to it.
Yeah. Hmm.
But you might love it and you might stay. And I had a very similar story. Like when I left, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go take a couple of assignments, just see what it's like out there, and then I'm going to come
Hmm.
back.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
I have never gone back home.
Yep. Hi.
So
I know. It's wild.
so it's funny how that happened, and I think that the beauty is it is flexible. Like you can
Hmm.
do it for one chapter of your life until it doesn't make as much sense anymore, and you can always hop right back into it. So
Yeah.
it's super nice to have that flexibility.
Definitely. Definitely. And I have the flexibility of going back home. I mean, I'm a girl. I didn't even go away for college. Like I stayed my college. I mean, it was a wonderful college that helped. They had a great nursing program, but it was 20 minutes from my hometown. Like I didn't go away at all. So it was just like a scary thing, but I am very close to my family, so that has been hard, but the beautiful thing is that it's so flexible. I go home so much. I mean, I'm in Indianapolis all the time it feels like still.
How do you balance family and occasions and work? Are you someone who takes a big break between contracts? Do you work it in? How do you find that balance?
I've gotten it down to two bigger visits a year is what I try to do. I try to do like a July summertime because that's fun in Indiana. I miss the warm weather and stuff. Um, I try to do like a July, 4th of July type thing just because that's something that means something to me at home, back home,
Hmm.
4th of July and things like that. And then the holidays are huge. I mean, I'm very close to my family and my grandma, and she loves Christmas and I love Christmas. And so I just can't imagine not being home for the holidays. So what I try to do is just two big trips, one mid-July, one December. And then whatever happens, I mean, this year in particular, I have been back home so many times just because, my cousin got married and then someone else had a baby shower and things like that. So I try to sprinkle in what I need to in between there, but at least look something to look forward to is the two bigger trips, that the consistent ones.
Definitely. Yeah, and having that option to be home at least for the holidays that are like most significant to
Yeah.
you and your family is awesome.
Hmm.
You mentioned Christmas being a big one for your family. Do you
Hmm.
work like Thanksgiving and New Year's, or are you someone who tries to take a few off?
I try. I have done a little bit of both. There has been some years that I have taken off all the way from Thanksgiving to past New Year's.
Hmm.
Nothing like it. I mean, I truly every time I laugh that I'm doing it because I'm like, this will never happen. And every year I'm like, this might be the last year this has ever happened because this just doesn't happen. Like if you're on a permanent staff job, like you'll never be able to get that.
Right.
So I take advantage of it as much as I can. But there's also what I typically do is work into like first or second week of December, and then take off Christmas and New Year's, and then mid-January. So like a month is
Yeah.
usually what I do, which
That's
amazing.
so nice. So
Yeah,
nice.
so
Um,
amazing.
So I think that you just named like one of them with holidays and the optionality to take those off as being a perk of being a traveler.
Hmm.
But what, in your opinion, are some other advantages of being a travel nurse versus staff?
Man, there are so many. I kind of when I'm talking to people about this, I break them down into personal advantages and career. I mean, if we're going in a career direction, travel nursing is phenomenal because you are so well rounded by the end of it. I mean, I there are so many things that I think brought me anxiety and just, you weren't as confident in yourself as a nurse. And then once you start travel nursing and you're like, oh my God, I did that. I mean, I was just thrown into the fire, it feels like, when my first assignment. I was only, as I said, a new grad nurse for a year and a half. And then I went to Dallas Children's, huge, and was on their float team. And
Oh
I'm like, well,
wow.
first of all, I can't even believe, like, I can't even believe that sometimes, because I'm like, I just went right for it. But you realize how good you can be and how versatile you really are. And you just are so well rounded and you can work with so many personalities. And that is really something to be said. I mean, that career wise, I feel so much more confident in everything that I do just because I've done it all, it feels like, and seen it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I mean, and that's so true. Like you are really like thrown into it as a traveler. You're not getting that like super dedicated month long like orientation. You're getting a couple days of shadowing when you get to the
yeah,
floor, maybe.
pretty much.
So yeah, you really learn a lot and I learned that there are a lot of right and good ways to do the same thing. You don't
Yeah.
get stuck in
Yes.
that like we do it this one way. Like your mind is open to like, oh wow, there's actually a lot of ways to go about this and you start thinking more creatively when you're trying to solve these
Yes.
problems.
Yeah. And you can tell who's been a traveler and who hasn't, because everyone who thinks that there's one way to do it has never been a traveler. For sure. You can just like tell.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um well, so what do you think what has been like one of the most challenging assignments or just like part of your travel career to this point?
I can answer both. If you specifically assignment, I would say it was that Grand Rapids, Michigan assignment was the most difficult for me, just because I am kind of a social butterfly and I think that assignment showed me that I definitely need interpersonal interaction to be anything. And the fact that it took me a while, really, I struggled that one. It they came around. I mean, by the end of the thing, they threw me like a going away party, and they had like I love grilled cheese, and they had like a grilled cheese bar for me on my last day.
That's
Like, it was,
amazing.
yeah, I know, it was so random and like so specific, but so it worked out, but it definitely challenged me in a lot of ways. I had to learn to be okay doing things by myself. I had to learn how to deal with conflict. I mean, in the assignment, I had learned that there was some drama surrounding hiring a traveler in the first place
Mm,
after the fact. So I walked in to them already being not happy I was there without
right.
my knowledge at all. So that was just interesting. That was like challenging in a different way. And that's just typical. You don't always know kind of what you're walking into sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, that was the challenge for that. Overall, travel nursing, I, I think the biggest challenge is, I mean, it's different for everybody, but me personally, it's finding a living place and like the moving part.
Hmm.
That's the part I mean, once you're settled, it's fine, but I'm like, oh, especially I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm like, I'm moving again. Like,
Right, right. Uh, well, have you found any like tips or tricks that make your house hunt or your move easier for each assignment? Like, is there, like, I know for me, my like trick, which isn't that much of a trick, but I would always look on Airbnb for my housing and I would always message the host directly for a place that I liked and just say, hey, I'm a travel nurse. I'm going to be here for 3 months, potentially longer. Like, would you consider like a lower monthly rate? And like, a lot of times they'd say yes. Sometimes it was no, but I
Mhm.
tried. So that
Yes.
was kind of like my thing that I like narrowed down to being a little bit of an unlock. Is there anything like that that you've discovered?
I have specifically told people that exact same thing. And it's funny because I even have some friends who I would tell them to do that. And they're like, no, everything's too expensive. And I'm like, email them, like
Right.
direct message them. That's how I found most of it. These days, there's furnished finders, and I have had my last three assignments have been successful with that every single time. So
Nice.
that's been cool. That was something, but once again, I've been in it for so long that hasn't been around the whole time I've been a travel nurse. So I was, when I first started, it was Airbnb, it was even Craigslist, which can get sketchy, but it worked out for me once, so that works. But I always tell people, because there's tricks to it, but it's also overwhelming because the good ones are pricey, and then the ones that are reasonable, and it's like hard finding a good area. You just like don't know what you're walking into sometimes. So I always tell people, because there are so many choices and it can be overwhelming, pick which one, this assignment, you want to focus on. Is it more important for you to save money, or is it more important for you to have an awesome spot?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can't do both.
Right. That's true.
And you stress trying to do both. You try to find the best, coolest spot for the lowest money, and it's sometimes you just got to give one of them up a little bit to release the pressure. You just got to find somewhere. So I always tell people to see which one's your focus. Like this time I was like over living with people. I wanted to live by myself. But earlier this assignment, I was like, I am getting the highest rate I've ever gotten. I want to just bank some money. So I just went for like the most cost efficient one earlier. And so you just got to prioritize a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I was traveling in my mid-20s and very much prioritized my lifestyle and location, and probably could have saved a lot more money if I had gone the other way, but I lived in some sweet spots.
Yeah. I know, you just gotta, I know. Sometimes it's just a balance of which one means the most to you, for sure. I've done both as well.
Right. Well, all right. Well, so what's next for you? Are you thinking more years of traveling ahead, or what's your plan?
I don't know. Every year, I wish I knew, because I just can't even believe I've been doing it this long in general. I mean, fun fact, I did try to settle permanent during the pandemic, and here I am back again. So there was like, in this last 10 years of being a traveler, there was like a year and 2 months, a year-ish, where I was core at CHLA in Los Angeles. And I feel like the whole time I was like 1 foot out the door still. So I don't know. We'll see. I think that the immediate plan is that my contract is done here in December. I always go home for the holidays, like I said. I'll start somewhere new in January and then go from there.
Nice. That's the life of a traveler. You figure it out every few months at a time.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Jeri, it was great to chat with you today. I'm so glad that you took the time out. It's awesome to get to know our nurses a little bit better.
This was fun.